Hello, dear friends. Today is November 5th, 2025, and this is our traditional overview of the battlefield map. As of today, we continue to receive an enormous flow of reports from almost the entire line of contact, while real territorial changes occur only in a few sectors. The main developments are taking place in three directions: Pokrovsk, Krasnyi Lyman, and Kupiansk. From other areas, we mainly get situational updates, which we'll review and discuss in this video. But first, as usual, I'd like to ask you to subscribe to the channel. You know that your subscription greatly helps the channel's growth. If you've been watching these videos but haven't subscribed yet, please do so. And my sincere thanks to everyone who already has. So friends, I understand that everyone is most interested in the situation in Pokrovsk and Myrnohrad, for obvious reasons, since that's where the most dramatic events are now unfolding. Of course, we'll talk in detail about what's happening there and what updates we've received. The situation there is developing fast, but I'd like to begin today's report not with Pokrovsk, but with another sector, the left bank of the Oskol River near Kupiansk. Regarding this area, Ukrainian forces are trying to push north of Kupiansk with two main goals. First, to break the blockade that trapped their units in the city's right bank center, and second, to reverse the situation and drive Russian forces out of Kupiansk. Zelensky recently claimed there were only 60 Russian soldiers in the city. Well, if that's true, it should take just one day to liberate it, right? 60 soldiers for an entire city, that shouldn't be a problem to clear. Jokes aside, I'm not sure if Zelensky himself understood what he was saying. The reality is that the situation in this area is very serious. Although Ukrainian counterattacks have achieved little so far, they've managed to saturate the front line with manpower. Previously, Russian forces had numerical superiority, which allowed them to take more than half of the city. But now the balance is roughly equal, maybe even tilting toward the Ukrainian side. That's why this area must be watched closely. I'm afraid some analysts were too optimistic in their predictions about a quick capture of Kupiansk. My own forecast, if you remember, was by the end of the year. Now even I'm not so sure. I don't want to sound alarmist, but I see some worrying signs. For instance, on the map, the village of Moskovka is marked red as under full Russian control. In reality, it's not. It's a grey zone. No Russian forces, no Ukrainian forces either. The settlement itself is almost empty. There's nowhere to dig in. The same goes for Radkovka, also a grey zone. So the real picture is far more complex than what the maps show. It's a layered front where Ukrainian and Russian positions intertwine and no clear line of control exists. However, the situation for Ukrainian troops in Pokrovsk and Myrnohrad is far worse. In fact, catastrophic. Yesterday I showed detailed footage from the city. All the territory up to the railway tracks is now under full Russian control. Russian troops have begun document checks and evacuation of civilians who stayed to meet them. In the northern part of Pokrovsk, the Ukrainian defense is also collapsing rapidly. The city's fate is sealed. That's a fact. It's a matter of days, not weeks, before the Russian army controls it entirely. At the moment, they already hold about 85% of Pokrovsk. Even Julian Röpke, a military analyst from the German outlet Bild, agreed with this estimate. Yesterday morning, many sources reported the same figure, and a few hours later, Röpke confirmed it himself. Because it's true. Only 15% of the city remains to be taken, and then Pokrovsk will be 100% under Russian control. But an even more intriguing situation is developing in nearby Myrnohrad. There, compared to Pokrovsk, Russian forces still control only a small part of the city. Yet almost the entire Ukrainian garrison has ended up nearly encircled. It's not fully marked on maps yet, but I can confirm that yesterday Russian troops entered the suburban village of Rovnoye, located between Pokrovsk and Myrnohrad. Two key settlements, Rovnoye and Svetlo, form the last corridor between them. If Rovnoye falls, the already narrow passage out of Myrnohrad will shrink to about 1 kilometer. Ukrainian military bloggers and officers are sounding the alarm, accusing Zelensky of refusing to order a withdrawal. As a result, significant Ukrainian forces are now trapped in a real encirclement. We're not talking about hundreds, but a full garrison of more than 1,000 soldiers still sitting inside Myrnohrad. Events here will escalate very soon. You'll see. Personally, I'm already thinking ahead. Pokrovsk and Myrnohrad will inevitably fall, if not this week, then next, or by mid-month. But what happens afterward? Will the Russian army be able to exploit its momentum and push the retreating Ukrainian forces further, not stopping at these cities? Theoretically, there's potential to advance all the way to Dnipro. But will it work? Honestly, I don't know. If Russian units manage to seize Grishino quickly, the Ukrainians will have to fortify not along the chain of small villages on the Grushinka River, but closer to Shevchenko and Svetlo, right before Dnipro. But let's not speculate too far. We'll see how it unfolds. Meanwhile, bad news for Kiev doesn't end with Pokrovsk. According to my information, the Russian army has also entered another city, Seversk. There's no official confirmation yet, since no verified footage has emerged, but the reports from soldiers are reliable. The map shows Russian forces at the southern outskirts, but in fact, they've already entered the city itself, on Pavlova Street, reaching the local gas station. This isn't a full-scale assault yet, but it's a troubling sign for the Ukrainians. Their reserves are stretched thin. They can't put out fires everywhere. There are only 2 supply roads left, and both are now under Russian drone surveillance. Just a 2-kilometer advance on either flank will make resupply completely impossible. If Ukrainian command learned from its mistakes, it would already have ordered a withdrawal from Seversk to save its troops from encirclement and destruction. But we know they won't. Which means the Seversk garrison faces the same fate as the one in Myrnohrad. First encirclement, then annihilation, within a month or 2. Now let's move to the Orikhiv sector. In the Orikhiv area, the news mainly comes from Stepnogorsk and Malaya Tokmachka. There's also footage from one of the former islands of the Kakhovka Reservoir, Bolshie Kuchuguri. Ukrainian troops attacked Russian positions there and raised their flag. Earlier this was an island with no land access, but now, after the Dnipro River has dried up, the reservoir is gone, leaving open ground. The area had been under Russian control, but Ukrainian forces launched a raid, pushed them back, and likely just planted the flag. There's no evidence they're actually holding the island. As for Stepnogorsk, fierce fighting continues. Most reports mention ongoing strikes on Ukrainian positions using FPV drones and artillery. Some sources claim Russian aviation is active there, while others deny it, saying Ukrainian forces pushed the Russians back and that Stepnogorsk remains under Kiev's control. No verified footage from either side has appeared for weeks. Ukrainian positions have also been attacked near the village of Primorskoye, while Russian positions came under fire near Plavny in the southern outskirts of Primorskoye and near Kamenskoye. From Stepovoye, Malaya Sherbaki, and Sherbaki, no updates today. Moving to Malaya Tokmachka, heavy positional battles are ongoing. As we discussed yesterday, this area has turned into static trench warfare. Ukrainian forces no longer attempt full-scale assaults, but continue to strike Russian positions with FPV drones and artillery. Russian troops, in turn, hit Ukrainian positions near Novodanilovka and south of Orikhiv. Otherwise, only routine updates from this sector. Now to the Huliapole direction. No territorial changes here either, only reports. The entire front line remains active, with ongoing skirmishes along almost every section. Russian forces appear to be rotating units and regrouping while bringing up supplies for future assaults. Fighting continues around Veseoloye, Zeleny Gai, Vysokoye, as well as Novoye and Novospenovskoye. Ukrainian positions are being shelled inside Uspenovka and near Sladkoye. Some sources claim Russian troops are now storming Uspenovka. But again, no confirmed footage yet. The latest confirmed change came from Novovasilyevka, which is now fully under Russian control, allowing them to pressure nearby Ukrainian positions. Massive FAB-3000 air bombs were also reported hitting Ukrainian lines there. Everything indicates that new assaults may resume in this direction soon, and Uspenovka might fall under Russian control in the coming days. That's all the news for now. Let's move a little further along the map in our next segment. On the Dnipropetrovsk axis, active fighting is taking place around the villages of Danilovka, Novoalexandrovka, and Alexeyevka. Here, Russian forces are attacking Ukrainian positions and expanding their zone of control. Some pro-Russian sources report that the zone of control is expanding significantly in favor of the Russian army, but so far no confirming material has been provided. I remind you that news arrives first, and confirming information usually follows within 2 to 3 days. Then we make changes on the map. It is possible that in the coming days we will see movement near Danilovka and an expansion of control to the north of Novoalexandrovka and Alexeyevka. Ukrainian positions were also struck near the villages of Nechaevka and Tikoye, and airbursts were reported near Pokrovsk. These strikes increasingly hit Ukrainian temporary deployment points and positions. Everything points to Russian forces actively advancing in this direction. There are still many civilians in the town, but some sources already report that an evacuation order was issued. Those are the latest reports from this sector for today. On the Kostyantynivka, Konstantinovka axis, heavy fighting is underway around the village of Plesheyevka. Although the Russian Ministry of Defense announced that Plesheyevka had come under Russian control, this does not reflect reality. Plesheyevka is, for the most part, currently a grey zone. Ukrainian positions north and northwest of Ivanopole have been attacked, which indicates that Kiev still retains control of those territories. Ukrainian positions on the approaches to Berostok are also under attack. As you know, the map marks lines of fortifications and defensive strongpoints. These Ukrainian fortified areas are now being targeted, in particular, with FPV drones. Strikes are also being conducted against Ukrainian temporary deployment points and positions in Kostyantynivka itself. No territorial gains have been recorded there today. Now we move to the Siversk direction, then to the Krasnyi Lyman direction. From the Krasnyi Lyman sector, we are receiving both reports and confirmed changes. Let's start with the changes. On this sector, there were indeed Russian positions, and today Ukrainian forces attacked Russian positions in the eastern part of the town. Ukrainian FPV drone operators fired upon and burned a Ukrainian Humvee used by assault units as they approached Russian positions. This confirms that Russian positions exist in the eastern part of the settlement, despite fierce fighting in the forested areas north of Yampol. We also received reports of heavy combat north of Yampol today, with strikes on Ukrainian positions using Russian aviation. As for other reports from this sector, Ukrainian positions continue to be attacked near Novosyolovka, Yarovaya, and Drobyshevo. Russian aviation strikes were recorded today on Ukrainian temporary deployment points near Yarovaya and on Ukrainian positions near Novosyolovka. All signs point to the possibility that Russian forces have begun assault operations on Novosyolovka itself. I remind you that if Russian troops take Novosyolovka and then seize Yarovaya, the supply road to Lyman will be completely cut off, and Lyman will become isolated. You can already see that Russian forces have consolidated in the eastern part of that settlement. Those are the updates from this sector for today. Now let us briefly go over the political news. Our source reports that a real smell of uncertainty and fear has spread through Bankova as officials realize the situation is slippery and could at any moment collapse their entire house of cards. A week ago, the situation seemed solid. Now it's approaching fragility. At this point, many begin to hedge, and the system is facing internal covert sabotage. The Telegram channel legitimately reports. Infighting inside the system is intensifying. Of course, the office insists they will extinguish this crisis and retain power. But this claim is hard to believe. The endurance, the approval rating, and the Western backing are not what they were a year ago. We are watching closely. According to our information, we expect a public statement from Zelensky. He is currently coordinating with the London establishment on the exact narrative he will present about the frontline situation. The only question that interests us is whether he will be allowed to publicly criticize the Zelensky administration directly. If he is allowed, that means Zelensky is being abandoned permanently. If not, Zelensky will be given time for one last so-called finale. Our source says Sersky is in a depressed state, though he tries not to show it. Most likely this time he will indeed be removed, although the office promises to keep him in post and throw someone else under the bus. We think he will be deceived. What we revealed long ago has become reality. Zelensky will ultimately make Syrskyi the scapegoat for all failures. In 2024, he was not removed because there was no replacement. He was a convenient puppet used to diffuse public outcry over setbacks at the front. They kept Syrskyi to absorb the negativity, and Zelensky could always shift blame onto him. The source adds that Syrskyi's team was surprised that only the so-called Kremlin public pages, meaning us and our colleagues according to the Zelensky camp's version, exposed the theatrical stunt by Zelensky and Yermak. Others, following orders, sided with the office because they are on a leash. The Venezuelan escalation is splitting the United States. In recent polls, almost half of Americans oppose strikes on Venezuelan territory. Only 19% support them. The White House finds itself in a dead end. It hoped to engineer regime change in Caracas, but that has not happened. The psychological campaign and the build-up of a military grouping in the Caribbean did not work. An internal split in Caracas did not materialize. After the attempted coup in 2019, Maduro purged many disloyal elements from the military and security services, and the bulk of opposition supporters left Venezuela over the last 6 years. Now the Trump team must either acknowledge defeat and withdraw forces or proceed with strikes, but the latter option is increasingly criticized within the United States. Democrats hope Trump will become mired in a Venezuelan quagmire, turning it into an Iraq for him, which could be used as an anti-war card in the upcoming congressional elections. The situation is worsened by a raging shutdown in Washington. Air traffic controllers across America are already forced to solicit online donations for personal needs. If they do not come to work, air travel will shut down completely. And First Deputy Chairman of the State Duma Defense Committee, Alexei Zhuravlyov, made a statement: Russia is already supplying weapons to Venezuela. Special cargoes were delivered to Caracas by Il-76 transport planes just days ago. Details on volumes and exact nomenclature of what is being transported from Russia are classified.